All right, welcome to this episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, TJ Martinell. With me is our reporter, June Clouser. And we're going to be talking about a situation that could cost Spokane landlords millions of dollars under a proposed mandate that would require them to retrofit their units to provide adequate cooling, which is ironic because there's been this whole discussion about how, with all the Europeans coming to America for the World Cup, I see all these discussions about uh, air conditioning that they don't have over there. So, Tim, seems like almost over here, we want to make it a human right.
Yeah, in the state and the city of Spokane have kind of been inching towards that. Spokane wants to take a little bit bigger leap than the state. Last year, they had passed this ordinance, or not last year, I guess, back in 2024, they had passed this ordinance, which essentially codified the right or a tenant's right to AC. So they said legally, you cannot prevent your tenant from installing an AC under very slim exceptions, and the state ended up passing that law in the last year or so. So now it's a statewide thing. But Spokane wants to take a step further and say tenants not only have a right to AC, but if their unit becomes so hot that it's causing health issues, the landlord has to provide an AC unit. And if they don't, the tenant can go out and then deduct it from their monthly rent. And this is in response to a heat dome event years ago that killed, I think it was around 20 people in the Spokane area. So they're saying, look, the temperatures are getting hotter, so we want to protect our residents. The concern is, what is this going to cost and who's going to pay for it? This is essentially a new housing mandate that's going to fall on landlords, and it's going to hit some harder than others, particularly mom and pops, people that only have one, two, or three rentals, not these big property developers, though it'll cost them big time as well. But we're talking about an ordinance that says not only do you have to put AC in the unit, but every bedroom in the unit. So one bedroom, maybe that could mean an AC in your bedroom, an AC in the hallway, an AC in the kitchen. If you're talking a three-bedroom unit, I mean, that's even more. So we don't know how much this is going to cost. Steve Corker, he used to be on the city council. He wrote an op-ed with the Rental Housing Association of Washington, and he said, "Look, I'm a longtime landlord myself, and I want to help people out. The concerns are real, but at the same time, we're talking about a mandate that is going to require tens of thousands of units in the city, which are not set up for this level of capacity, cooling capacity, uh, to install these units." He put the cost at around $9,000 to $12,000 per unit. So if you think the city has around an estimated 20 to 40,000 rental units. At the low end, we're talking around 100 million or so. On the high end, we're talking 200 to 300 plus $1 million to comply with this. And this is going to fall on landlords at this point. The ordinance isn't written in a way that the city is going to pick up the cost. So that's what the Rental Housing Association of Washington is saying. Some local landlords are saying, and even nonprofits that provide homelessness services and other associations in the city are saying, look, we're not going to be able to afford this.
I and there's two separate issues. One, should you have air conditioning in a rental unit? I mean, people could say that's a nice perk, right? If you wanted to include that. Um, and I mean, are they? You think they would just say, "Hey," or create an incentive for them to put AC in? It's like, "Hey, if you put AC in, here's an incentive for you to do that." So that way they can have it as an option. But requiring them to do that, it's so. I still think it's so funny that there's no air conditioning in European countries from what I understand. But here we're trying to make it something that you have to have in a rental unit. Um, but I'm wondering like what if there's so many concerns, so much consensus about the cost of this, and people saying we can't afford it, who's driving these ideas? Like, where is this coming from?
Well, the ordinance came from three Spokane City Council members: Paul Dillon, Kitty Klitsky, and Kate Tellis, I believe. One of them, maybe I'm getting one of them wrong. It might be Sarah Dixon as well. She's thrown some support behind this ordinance as well. But um, There was already a city policy saying, look, you can't stop your tenants from installing AC units. The state adopted that. It's a state law now. It applies to almost everyone except under slim exceptions, like I said. So the argument wasn't over whether or not you should be allowed to have an AC in your unit. I don't think anyone's really arguing against that. It's who's responsible for paying this. Should it be the landlord's responsibility to always provide AC units? And I can understand, okay, you bake it into future building codes. So buildings are built with this. But the reality is that 60% of Spokane's housing stock, according to Steve Corker, isn't set up for this. So it's going to require substantial upgrades that these landlords can't afford. And not to mention, you have several rental properties under development in Spokane, and some of the nonprofits brought this up at a recent city council meeting where they were already under construction, and now they have to plan for tens of thousands of dollars in new costs to make sure it's capable of handling all these AC units. And at the same time, you have the city of Spokane. They recently passed a data center moratorium. And a lot of the concern was over electrical consumption. And yeah, you might look at an AC and think, oh, it's one AC. It's not going to take up a lot of electricity. But if you think, okay, there's 20 to 40,000 units, assume each one has 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, hallways. I mean, that's a lot of AC units going onto the grid all at once. I
Yeah.
mean, this
I,
mandate, it's
I'm
good.
surprised that the environmental community hasn't weighed in and said no. I mean, you think that with the whole our state's one could argue obsession with reducing carbon emissions and reducing energy consumption, that you would say, oh, we don't want you to use AC, use a fan, throw some ice, some shredded ice out into the air, and then just cool off that way, or something like that, as opposed to bringing in AC units, which are very heavy energy consumers. So I just find it really interesting that the, from what you've seen, has this gotten a lot of environmental activists involved in saying, "Hey, look, like this is how much electricity this is going to consume. This is how much carbon it's going to be emitted. This is how much, so and so."
I haven't really dug into that side of it, if I'm being honest. Not quite yet. What I'm hearing from a lot of people on both sides of the issue is that they're not downplaying the health concerns from the people proposing it or the supporters of it. They're just saying, look, if you're going to put a mandate on us that's going to cost this much money, and we have to do it potentially right now, this instant. I mean, that's going to blow up potentially the housing stock if a bunch of people pull their rentals off the market. And the Spokane Realtors Association, they're already saying people are pulling their houses off the market, their rentals. They're pulling them off the rental market and putting them up for sale. So that's taking
Right.
away from the rental supply.
Yeah.
The They're just saying, look, if the city wants to do this, okay, we're not completely against the idea. Some are, but not everyone is. But if you're going to do it, help out. If you want to require us to do this, then you should put up some money too and not make it another unfunded mandate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
The,
it's
the re-
the unintended consequences, and also there's people taking houses off the rental market, but how many people who would have been landlords are not going to be landlords? They're just looking at this and just saying, you know what, I can't financially, it's too financially risky for me to rent a property. I'd rather just sell it.
Yeah, and you think about the costs that come with this. Yes, as a renter, it's ideal to have an AC unit inside your rental. But at the same time, you have to think if your landlord is potentially going to have to pay thousands, over $10,000 to make this happen, where does that money come from? Not everyone just has a pile of cash sitting aside. It's going to flow into your monthly rent. And yeah, the state has a law where it caps rent at about 10% each year. Um, but you're approaching a situation where potentially, because of those costs, your landlord is going to raise the rents the maximum amount every year. So yeah, renters could benefit from this ordinance and having AC units, but at the same time, there are consequences. Your monthly rates could go up. This isn't without financial impact to the renters themselves.
Well, Tim, we appreciate you continuing to cover this issue. It's again, I'll just reiterate, it's so fascinating that, here in city of Spokane in Washington State, we're a state that's so concerned about environmental stuff and reducing carbon, and always looking to Europe It's kind of this model. They're going in the complete opposite direction when it comes to air conditioning. So, we're proud as Americans to have air conditioning as an option, but it's a different thing when you're requiring landlords to put it in rental units. So, obviously, you'll be keeping an eye on this story. So, listeners can follow this story and others at thecentersquare.com. I'm your host, TJ Martinell. Thank you for listening to this episode of Washington in Focus.